Hey guys, I'm Taylor Ludwig. Welcome back to another episode of the Poor Man's Workshop. In today's video, I am stoked to show you guys my new outfeed table. This thing has been a long time in the works. I've actually been designing and building it for close to a year now. This thing has got so many features and so many things that you can do with it. I'm super excited to show you. The coolest features though, I think, are the T-track, as well as this awesome downdraft table, which will help to keep the dust at a minimum in the shop. So I've decided to break this build up into two parts. There'll be this video, which will cover pretty much the build of the carcass in the top and the downdraft. Second video will cover creating the drawers, getting all of the other features all put together, and then also cutting and installing the T-track. So without further ado, let's get building. Before I started building this, I actually designed it in SketchUp and downloaded the cut list and cut diagram using the cut list extension. If you want to download the cut list and cut diagram as well as comprehensive build plans for this build, they are available on my website. Just make sure you go check it out. I've linked it in the description below. I first started by cutting down the sheets of 3/4 inch plywood with my track saw to more manageable sizes, and then I cut them to their final dimensions on the table saw. I only cut the pieces for the carcass and the top to their final dimension, as it's best to cut the pieces for the drawers later when you can measure and make sure that they're a good fit. I then cut the stretchers to their final dimensions on the miter saw, and then started the tedious task of drilling all the pocket holes. Pocket holes aren't very pretty, but for shop furniture, they work just great, and no one's gonna see them anyways. I want you guys to know that I got a lot of my inspiration for this build from Johnny Brooks of Crafted Workshop and the video he has about his T-track table. Make sure you go and check out his video. I'll link it below, and make sure you watch some of his other stuff. He's definitely one of my favorite makers on YouTube right now. Once that was complete, I added pocket holes to the back inside of the cabinet side so they can attach to the cabinet back. Once I was complete with all the pocket holes, I attached my first stretcher using glue and 1¼ inch pocket hole screws. If you've ever used pocket hole screws before, you know these things like to move on you, so I stabilized it using the Rockler pocket hole clamp while setting the first screw. This thing works wonders in making sure you get the two pieces perfectly aligned. Then I did the same thing with the other 3 stretchers. Now in hindsight, there might have been an easier way to do this. I probably should have put it side face down and attached it, but I got the same result anyways. Then I flipped the entire thing over and attached the other cabinet side to the ends of the 4 stretchers. I repeated this entire process until I had 2 identical cabinet carcasses. Once each front cabinet was built, it was time to build out the center section where the trays and slide out bucket will go. I did this by attaching the base using, you guessed it, more pocket hole screws and glue while clamping to make sure it wouldn't move. Then I flipped the whole thing to the ground and attached the top stretchers. Here it was a little bit more difficult to use a pocket hole clamp because I didn't have a flat surface to clamp it to, so I just used a regular parallel clamp and it worked just fine. With the front cabinet carcass assembled, it was time to assemble the 2 side cabinet carcasses. One cabinet will house an air compressor and a large drawer. The other will be where the downdraft, small parts containers, and slide out cabinet will be. I did this in the same method of pocket holes and glue while clamping and checking for square along the way. This brings up a really good point. It's always important to check for square while building these carcasses out. The last thing you want to do is have an outfeed table that isn't flush with the height of your table saw because it's not square. If this happens, you'll have issues sliding wood from the table saw to the assembly table, which is no dice. The difference between these cabinets and the front ones are that these have a bottom panel
instead of just stretchers on the bottom. This will help to add some stability and strength to the entire table, as well as it looks better because you'll be able to see the bottom of these cabinets. I then added stretchers on top and repeated the process for the cabinet that goes on the other side. Now that the front cabinet section and the two side cabinets are assembled, it was time to attach them all together. To do this, I lined them up, making sure everything was square and flush. Then I clamped them in place and screwed the whole thing together using 1 1/4 inch panhead cabinet screws through the back of the front cabinet carcass into the other cabinets. Whew, that's a mouthful. If you're saying to yourself, wait, the front cabinet section has a back? Since when? Yes, it does. I actually failed to film myself attaching the back of the front cabinet section, but it's just a piece of plywood that spans the back of the front cabinet section, including the middle where the pull-out trays and the bucket holder will go. While the table was still relatively light, it was time to attach the leveling feet and the workbench casters. To install the leveling feet, I propped up the side of the table I was working on and installed them according to the manufacturer's instructions. Having leveling feet on this table is vital because my garage floor is anything but level. This table will be right over a seam on my garage floor where it seems to run down in opposite directions. This table really wouldn't sit flat if it didn't have these feet. And they can hold well over 1,000 pounds. Next, I installed the workbench casters. Now, workbench casters allow you to keep whatever they are attached to on the ground and then raise it when you need to by pressing down on the caster step. The awesome thing about these workbench casters is that they are easily removable. This allows me to use them on other heavy things like my joiner without having to buy more than one set. They go on via this caster plate that is installed permanently, and then the caster just slides right on and locks into place with this metal rod. I don't anticipate having to move this table a whole lot, but it's nice to know that I can if I need to. This thing is probably going to weigh a ton. With the carcass complete and the table starting to look like a table now, it's time to get the top built out. The top is made of 2 sheets of plywood trimmed to the dimensions in the build plans. One sheet is 1/4 inch longer and wider than the other to allow a little bit of overhang that will be flush trimmed off with my router later. This is a little trick that's shown by Johnny Brooks in his video. I first placed the slightly smaller board on bottom and lathered it in glue. I went full on gallon bottle here. I placed the larger one on top and lined it up, allowing a little bit of overhang on all sides. Then I put a nail in each corner. Now, I could use brad nails throughout the whole thing, but I'll be adding T-track later and I don't want to run into any nails when routing those dados. Instead, I used some clamps around the outside and put anything that had significant weight in my shop on the top and then let it dry overnight. Once it was dry, I took all the heavy stuff off as well as the clamps and flush trim each side with my Bosch plunge router. As you can see, this made for really smooth edges where the hardwood border would eventually attach to. Then it was time to get to work on the downdraft section, but first let's all admire my first cut on the table saw using the outfeed part of the table. After wrestling the tabletop down, I went to work on installing the bottom of the downdraft and the divider that will separate the small parts compartment and the slide out cabinet. If you like this build, make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. To install the divider, there might have been an easier way to do this. Looking back, I might have done it earlier in the process because it was hard to get into this tight spot and screw the pocket screws on the top and the bottom. But hey, I'm still learning. Let me know in the comments how or when you would have done this. Once those both were installed, I put the top back on, which was much harder than taking it off, by the way. It might have been easier with 2 people, but hey, I managed. Then I measured equal overhang on each side to prep for permanently installing this heavy boy. Then I clamped it in place and sunk 1.5-inch screws through the stretchers underneath into the bottom of the top throughout the whole thing. Now, you want to make sure you don't use too long of screws here because you could run into them when using the router to cut the slots for the T-track later. Once the top was permanently installed, I could finally cut the spot for one of my favorite features of this table, the downdraft. I first started by marking out where I wanted the downdraft to be. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the dimensions of the downdraft. If you want more specifics about it, they are included in the build plans. Once I had it sketched out, I used my plunge router with a straight bit and my straight edge to cut into the top. Now this was super nerve-wracking as I had just made this nice top and got it installed only to start cutting into it. To start, I would only plunge about 1/8 of an inch at a time until I was through, just to ensure I can maintain control of the router while I did it. I'm not super experienced using a plunge router, and I've learned some great things while doing this step. One tip is that it's easier to push the router than to pull it. If you pull it along the straight edge, you are more likely to get a sloppy cut than if you push it. After a few passes, I got more and more comfortable with the router and would plunge about 1/4 of an inch at a time just to speed things up. Once it was all cut out, I had this nice opening for a downdraft. I then moved the straight edge back about 1/2 an inch on each side and plunged the router a few times, totaling 3/4 of an inch, to create a ledge that the tabletop would sit on. I must say, the routing job on it turned out much better than I thought it was going to. Now that the section was cut out, I could install a side panel using pocket hole screws and caulk the whole thing to make sure it's airtight. I don't know how vital caulking the inside is, but I wanted to make sure I get the best suction for this downdraft. And I had some leftover caulk from a previous project, so hey, why not? On the ledge that the tabletop will sit on, I added some weather seal tape to make sure that the top was airtight and to help the suction go only through the top holes. The ledge is 3/4 inches deep from the bench top, so I used 1/4 inch weather seal tape because the downdraft top will be made of 1/2 inch plywood. This will help to make the downdraft top flush with the rest of the workbench. If you don't know, the purpose of a downdraft table is that it plugs directly into a shop vac or your dust collection system and allows you to collect any sanding, routing, or finishing dust directly down through the table before it becomes airborne. This helps to reduce the amount of harmful small dust particles that are in your shop. It also reduces dust boogers, and no one likes dust boogers. I then cut the top to the size of the opening, sneaking up on the fit to make sure it was a snug fit. I really like this Baltic birch stripe going through the center of this top. I thought it was a really nice touch. After that, I rounded over the corners using my band sander because the corners are rounded over in the opening. Now it's time to drill all the holes for the debris to be sucked down through. I plan to make multiple tops to use for different types of jobs. This one will have large 5/8 inch holes to allow large debris to go down into it. It's going to be for jobs that aren't as much of a concern that the debris would become airborne, like routing and planing. What I've learned as I've tested out multiple different tops, the smaller the hole and less amount of holes there are, the more suction you're going to get through it. But larger debris won't be able to be sucked through it as easily. If you want one for sanding and for finish spraying, it's probably best to make one that has small holes and/or holes on only one side of the downdraft top because those produce very fine debris. Either way, the process of drilling the holes is pretty straightforward. I marked out on the back of the top where I would like the holes using a carpenter's square, and then drilled a pilot hole through the back to the front with the smallest drill bit I had. I then flipped it all over and used my 5/8 inch Forstner bit using the small pilot holes as reference. Doing it this way makes it so you don't have to mark the top with pencil and you don't get any tear out. Then I smoothed over the edges of the holes with a 1/8 of an inch round over bit, making it smooth and safe to run your hands over. See? With the top finish, I could cut out the hole for the dust collector to attach to and attach the dust collector fitting. This is a 2.5-inch fitting, but I later switched it to a 4-inch fitting because I just wasn't getting enough suction. But once I got that switched out, it worked great. After that, I attached it to the flex hose and blast gate that connected to the drop-down part of my dust collection right by my table saw. And with the downdraft finished, I think that's where we'll have a slight intermission.
Well, I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out part number 2 when it's available. Should be up in the next week or 2. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll be notified anytime the Poor Man's Workshop has a new video. Again, thanks for watching. And like I always say, never stop creating.